And welcome to yet another episode of Funny Talk with Mangelli and Max. I'm your host, Tom Mangelli. This is my co-host, Doug Max. Say hello, Doug.
Hi, Tom. Wait a minute. You're the host and I'm the co-host?
Well, we're both co-hosts. But tell us who our guest is, our special guest.
You don't want to tell him? I'll tell him. You shouldn't be. Doug Karpf is our guest. He's a wonderful comedian. Hey, Doug.
Hi.
Hey, Doug.
How are
We're
you?
on with Doug's this week.
Yes, we got a lot of Dougs. Dougs everywhere.
This one is thinking, oh no, what have I agreed to?
Listen, for this kind of money, I'm willing. This is good stuff.
Listen, and if you're funny, we'll like double it. And if you're really funny, we'll triple it.
I'm clean, buddy. I'm clean. Always clean.
So for our audience who doesn't really know me or Tom, but also doesn't know Doug, I
That stung a little bit. Go ahead.
I want to tell people of the first time I recall seeing you. I don't know. I'm sure I'd met you earlier, but the first time I really knew what Doug Karpf could do was at a roast at a local comedy club. And Doug was the headliner of the roast that evening. And who was the comedian that did the drunk people really well? Somebody Brooks?
Drunk people?
Foster Brooks.
Foster Brooks. So I had seen Foster Brooks. Doug got up and played an incredibly drunken comedy club owner. And he was brilliant. He was amazing. And I'm into comedy maybe a year and a half at this point, something like this. And I'm thinking, like, yelling, "Stop! The club owner drinks a lot. You're making fun of him." Of course, that's what he was doing. He did it so well. I just thought I couldn't stop laughing. And I thought, oh my God, how brave and stupid you are at the same time. And then I realized it was you. You probably had, what were you, like what, 10 years ago, you'd been in comedy more than 10 years at that point?
I've been in comedy about 10 years.
Yeah.
That's what I was seeing. That was the bravery and the funny and the wonderful drunk impression.
I've had a lot of experience, Doug. I'm sort of a method actor when it comes to that.
He draws on personal experience.
I feel like Tom's going to bust through the wall at any moment and yell Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah.
That's just phenomenal. I've never seen a shirt fit someone so appropriately. Just perfect.
Well, that's why I got it.
Good stuff.
But Doug, I have to admit, I love your act.
Thank you.
I think you're hugely talented.
Thank you.
And funny as hell.
Thank you.
And by the way, thank you guys for having me on the show today. I appreciate it.
Oh, our pleasure. But mind you, you're not as huge as I am, but that's besides the.
Were you complimenting him, Doug, or me, Doug?
I was complimenting both of you. I was thanking both of you for having me on your show today.
I heard that. I was asking Tom when he said, "Doug, you're so talented."
When you hear me say Doug, I'm talking about Doug Karpf. If I'm referring to you, I'll say Stunad.
Wow.
Yeah, nice. So, Doug, how does it feel to be on the last episode of Funny Talk with Mangelli and Max?
Well, it's quite an honor.
It
must be how the band members felt on the Titanic. Just keep playing.
So, Doug, you, I know among things that I'm kind of impressed with and jealous of a little bit. You did a USO tour, or was it that, or something? You performed.
I've done numerous things for the troops, but they've all been stateside. So I've done stuff Fort Dix, Aberdeen Proving Grounds, McGuire. I've done a bunch of stuff, and then I've done a bunch of benefits, homeless vets, and all sorts of stuff for the vets over the years. Yeah, but all stateside. I've done stuff at the VA hospitals. To me, that's about the most rewarding thing as a comedian you could do. I'm very big into supporting those men and women that have given so much to our country, and anytime you're able to give back. I think that's you know, icing on the cake for a comedian. You know, I think it's a wonderful, and you guys have done stuff like that too, so you know how that feels.
Sure. And just so that you know, for future reference, I live like right around the corner from McGuire Air Force Base.
Wow. So maybe you
Lakehurst.
shouldn't wear that shirt outside. They may think it's some sort of a landing beacon or something, you know?
That's right. They use me as artillery practice.
Doug, when you said that, I said I was sorry you said that, because I'm very conflicted about your feelings about the men and women in uniform, because my father was a POW in World War II, or he was a forced laborer. He wasn't a POW. He escaped. I moved in to take care of him like 5 years ago, you know, a couple years after my divorce. My mother had died.
Right.
Anyway, so I took care of him. He died a few months ago at 97.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. But I feel horrible because of all the comedy I wrote, taking care of this 95-year-old war hero. I still do the comedy.
But I mean, I'm sure he appreciated that, and you know what, laughter is the best medicine, and I think that you know, if it's funny, it's funny, and I'm sure he knows that you respected him a great deal, and I think that you know, I think that's, like I said, it's the greatest honor to me. They're the greatest heroes, and we don't do nearly enough for them. So, like I said, whenever I can do anything that involves the military, I feel very blessed.
No, I understand. And listen, for all of the people that really at some point risk their lives for us, and nowadays it's the healthcare worker, police, lifeguards, you know, people are first EMS, people are doing so many stupid things. It's understandable because IQ is broadly distributed, as we can see. But
Right.
You know, is it wrong that I say to waitresses, thank you for your service?
Yeah, but I think if I was a waitress and you were one of my customers, I think that would be understood. They appreciated whatever service she gave you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you like to appreciate potato salad more than anyone, right, Tom?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You didn't say it; it's just understood.
Yeah.
I'm sitting at a table with Tom in a restaurant. The waitress comes up, really lovely woman, comes up, and she says, "I'm sorry for the wait." And Tom says, "Hey, don't make a crack like that to me." She started
Something like that.
She started crying.
In your head, imagine that funny, and that's what I said.
Right. Right.
Wherever Tom is, there's a comedy club.
Let me tell you something. I often mention to people that one of the funniest lines that in all my career of comedy that I tell people all the time is when Tom gets up and he says that my name is Tom Mangeli, which incidentally is Chinese for Tom and Jerry. I've always loved it. That line made him famous in my circles. I can tell you that.
Awesome. You know, when I first started out, I was writing material, you know, one of my concerns was to write material that other comics can't steal, and that's one of them. That's one of the jokes.
Yeah, you know what? They can jokes and bits here and there, but they can't steal you, Tom. You know, they can't steal your persona. You can't worry about stuff like that. Some of that.
Well, I don't now. This is when I first started out.
Yeah,
they can't steal you, Tom.
I don't fit in the van.
Lift.
You guys are both very unique stage personas, and no one can steal either one of your acts. You're both talented guys, and you're unique. You know, you're you know, there's nobody like either one of you, so you don't have to worry about that.
Or either one of me.
Or either one of you.
It's true for all three of us. Yeah.
So, Doug, tell us how you got into comedy. I believe you used to work as a police officer.
Yeah, I mean, I still work in law enforcement to this day. Actually, I've been doing that a very long time. But I got into comedy. Actually, I didn't want to get into stand-up at all. I had no desire whatsoever. Really. I had a very good friend of mine at the time. I got into it late, so I was about 30 years old, and I had a very good friend of mine who had pushed me for a long time to do it. He thought I would be really great as a stand-up, and I said, dude, you know, no, not even a shot that I'm getting up there. Like the whole idea of it was terrifying to me. And again, I really didn't have an interest in it, nor did I think I would be very good at it. And he said, "Oh, no, you'll be great. You make, I was the guy making everybody laugh in the diner after we've been drinking till 2 o'clock in the morning, and
Right, right.
cafeteria, and when we were out and about." And I said, "Listen, that's a different ball game. There's a lot of people like that can banter and bounce off of their friends, what their friends are saying, and bust chops and all that." I said, to get up on stage in front of complete strangers and have to, just have material or not necessarily have any help from an audience, so to speak, or be able to riff or play off of them, that's a whole different ballgame. I appreciated from the beginning how difficult it really, really was. But I think he pushed and pushed and pushed, and eventually he signed me up for an amateur night at the Comedy Cellar in Greenwich Village.
Okay.
And I was absolutely terrified, but I felt obligated because he had gone through all the effort. Back in those days, to find an amateur night, you had to go like in the classified ads of the New York Post or something. And he signed me up, and you had to get your, you remember the way it used to work. You had to bring your people, and I had about 10 people, I think, that had to drive over to Manhattan on a weeknight, for the big 5 o'clock weeknight show on a Wednesday.
Guys, what are you doing?
Yeah, and I'm driving across. I'll never forget driving across I guess it was like the Pulaski Skyway or something, going towards the Holland Tunnel. And we had a couple of girls with us that were friends of ours. And I must have looked like I was going to my execution, literally. And the one girl looks at me, she says, "Well, what are you so scared of? Why are you so frightened?" And I said, "Are you kidding me right now? I'm going into New York City to stand on a stage in front of 60 strangers and make a complete fool of myself." She said, "Well, I think you're making too much of it, And I said, "Are you kidding me? Like, what part are you playing in this, And she said, "I think," and it's funny because her words stick with me to this day. And she was like, she probably worked at Burger King or something. I don't know what she did. She had no experience in the entertainment industry whatsoever. But her words to this day, they were so simple, but they ring true. And I think the longer I've been in this business, I think I realize we all make it much more complicated than it really is, And I think we all kind of eventually come full circle and realize really what a simple yet difficult yet simple art it really is, if we're honest with ourselves, and we, if we get to the point where we can open ourselves to an audience and just be honest and be vulnerable. And she looked at me and she said, "Look, you're either funny or you're not." And I said, "This is what you have for me right now? I'm going to my execution, and you're either funny or you're not." But it's funny because years later, what I realized is that really is true. It's just about making people laugh. It's just about making them happy, forgetting, the day-to-day stuff that we all have to deal with, the stressful stuff, and you make them happy, you make them laugh. And if you're a funny person, witty and likable, really it's just about getting to a point where you can be you on stage and letting go a little bit, which is a terrifying thing to do, to become vulnerable to a group. No one wants to become vulnerable to the cashier at ShopRite, let alone 60 people on a stage in a comedy club. But I do remember walking in, and I remember at the time the gentleman who was running the show at Comedy Cellar was a gentleman named Greg Gilderman. And I walked in and I said to him, "Look," I said, "there were about 15 people. It was a showcase. You guys know the deal, that McClin's-esque type of deal where you got everyone's doing 7 minutes, which was an eternity at that time for me. I mean, I must have worked on myself for 2 weeks and memorized it verbatim, and it was absolutely horrible. And it was, talking about the crocodile hunter and every bit of crap.
We'll be a link to that show up on our Facebook page.
Yeah, and I get up there and I walk in and I said, "Please put me up towards the end." And he goes, "Nope, you're going second." Right, Doug? Remember those days? Just and he says to me, "You're going up second." I said, "Oh my God!" And I swear to you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, for those of you out there who have never done stand up and have never experienced what it's like in the beginning stages, but I think you guys can relate. I tell people all the time, if there were 2 doors and one entered into the club to stand in front of that audience for 7 minutes, and there was another door in which there was a Siberian tiger in the room, and both of them had an exit on the opposite side to get back out onto 7th Avenue or wherever it was, I would have taken my shot with the tiger. I would have just tried to creep the tiger.
Yeah.
But listen, I had no choice. I had people there to see me, and I couldn't let them down. I got up and I knew if I had forgotten one word, and those of you who have seen me perform, 7 minutes that's about how long it takes me to adjust the mic stand now, So, so usually I get the waitresses giving me dirty looks towards the end of the night, but I got up and, I knew if I had forgotten a word, I was dead. I was dead because I was terrified. I
Right.
got up and I went through my material and as amateur-esque as it was, and maybe 30 seconds into it, I got a couple laughs. I mean, it wasn't anything to write home about, but I think it just comforted me a little bit. And they weren't my family and they weren't my friends.
Uh,
They were just people that were there to support the comic, and it felt good. I'm not gonna lie, it felt good. You guys know.
yeah.
And it went well enough that I was willing and wanted to do it again. And I did it again and again, and eventually, I realized it was something that made me feel good, and it was a nice distraction from everyday life. I didn't expect it to turn into much of anything, really.
Uh,
And started doing all these little crappy rooms through the years that we've all done, one of which that I used to run myself, and made some friends like you guys, and over the years, and but the journey has been amazing, and eventually, people were willing to pay me, to do it, and I thought that was remarkable. I mean, I had never done anything in my life uh, that I enjoyed and gotten paid to do it, on a very minute scale. It's the closest any of us will come to being professional athletes, right? I mean, you're doing something you would do for free, and someone's giving you, whether it's $5 or $2,000, whatever it is, you're still getting paid to do something that you do for nothing. And
yeah.
I think the first time I got paid to perform, I was paid $10, and I was already in a
That's
career.
how I got paid. And you know who paid me?
I can only imagine.
Paid me.
I hired him. I didn't know any better.
Did I take
Right.
it? Yeah, it wasn't worth that, but did I take it or did I give it back to you?
Oh, you took it.
Normally $10. I don't. It was my first payment, so I needed to take it.
But
if
it
I
was
give back to you,
it was
the
like
$10
the principle of it.
back to you.
$10 to us at that point, our lives meant nothing except for the fact that someone just gave you $10 to do something fun. And when have
Yeah.
you ever had that experience?
Doug,
Really?
I remember a set with a comic. We'll probably talk about. We'll refer to as a sociopath, and we'll know who we're talking about.
Okay.
So it was, hey Doug, you listen. I got this gig. You wanna drive me out there? Okay. Where is it? 3.5 hours west in Pennsylvania, and I want to leave, so we're there early. So we get there about an hour and a half early to this. Well, and he said, and I've arranged in advance. You're gonna get like 5 minutes. Let you know how early I was that I was willing to do that.
Right.
We get there like an hour and a half early, and I'm sitting at this. I don't know if it was a Knights of Columbus or Elks Club, but there were a couple tables of couples, and the entire time we were sitting in the back corner of the room, they kept on looking over at me and pointing, and I knew they were thinking Jew, maybe Italian, but Jew. They were like honing. I could tell they were honing in on Jew, and not bright enough to not be sure I wasn't Italian. Either way. And then the sociopath went up to the guy running the show and said, by the way, my buddy drove me out here. Can you give him some time? And I'm like, you didn't fucking ask. I drove you 3.5 hours. And you expect me to no pay, he might have offered to buy a burger, but he was living in a basement at the time. I'm not going to take money from him. I didn't need it like that.
Right.
Anyway, you were talking about the steps up in comedy. Tom and I met taking a comedy class and had a genius instructor and then the sociopath. You know that. I think you know that. Yeah. I think you came to one of the shows the comedy class did. I don't know if you performed.
I may have performed. I think don't they normally have a pro guy come in and like close it out or something like that?
Yeah, I think you did that for our graduation show.
Yeah, I may have done that. Yeah.
It was, it's funny. Doug mentioned his 96-year-old father. when we had that graduation show, both his mother and father, who were alive at the time, came to the show, and I thought it was so cute.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, and then after you said it was so cute, I don't know if it was you or another friend said, Doug, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but when the comedian before you was talking about a squirting orgasm, your mother leaned across the table to your father and said, "What's that?" I heard that the day after the show. I swear, for 2 weeks, my parents were like 90 at the time. For 2 weeks, I totally avoided contact because I did not want my mother asking me. Yeah, what do you say?
If you didn't have when you were conceived, you would have never been born.
That's true. But you mentioned you started later in life and said you were 30. I was 50 and Doug was even older when we first
Right.
started.
Yeah, you're a young guy, Doug. You have a life ahead of you.
I'm 51.
I'm 60.
I'm 59.
You guys look great. You both look great.
The fat stretches the wrinkles.
Right. I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell them to get off of me. I'd rather have my wrinkles than the fat on
Okay.
them.
I think starting late is it's a blessing and a curse. I think obviously, you'd want to start when you're very young because you figure, you have more years to attack the business. But on the flip side, when you start a little later, you have so much life experience that you can draw from. So your material is much more relatable to the average audience,
Yeah, I didn't have an option, actually. I never smoked. I never drank. I didn't really drink. I was never married, never had any kids. I had no drug addictions. So all the things that, you draw from.
There's
wasn't
still
there.
time. There's still time
Oh, I know. I have faith.
for all that.
Yeah.
We have to take Tom out for a weekend and show him a little bit of life. Let's start off. Her name is Candy.
I can't go with candy. I'm diabetic.
So I'm going to tell Doug a story about our sociopath and see if he likes it. So we've talked about our sociopath on air, and he's anyway. He stole a year and a half at least of my life, and made me. He lied to me. He was a sociopath. What story was I going to tell, Tom?
I have no idea. I was waiting to find out.
I forgot. What was it? What story was I going to tell about him? It was a great story.
It must have been.
Glance at some of your artwork behind you, Doug. Maybe that'll jog your memory.
This guy, he once went to the...
Is Tom in a jail cell? Where is Tom exactly?
Yes. I'm in a bunker.
Okay. Doug, you still with us?
I'm thinking, and it bothers me so much that the sociopath stole my life for like a year and a half, made me think things that weren't true. Oh, Doug Karpf, our guest, was the first one, and I told him the story. He was the first one to give me any hint that there was something going on behind the scenes. And the reason was he had a wonderful open mic at McGlynn's in Springfield?
Yeah.
Melbourne.
The wonderful open mic, one of the first open mics I went to, and I felt very welcome at. And Doug was a wonderful host for open mics, and it wasn't true for everyone.
Thank you.
The Blaze. You know the Blaze, Doug?
The Blaze?
The Blaze. It was called the Blaze. Johnny Hollywood.
Okay.
Up in God knows where. It was anyway, abysmal place, but it was an open mic. Anyway, so I drove the sociopath to this open mic, and he said, "Listen, I'm going to tell him I have a show in New York later, so we can get up early and go." So he went up to you, Doug, and said, "Listen, can I go up early? I got a show later." And you came up to me later and said, "So are you driving him into New York?" And I said, "No, I'm driving him home." You go, "Well, he said he had a show." You're a cop. You said he said he had a show later. So you're driving him home and then he's going to drive into New York? I go, I guess. Anyway, that question, simply that, it made me realize, everybody is onto his bullshit and not me. So I started like tuning in. And, we'd compare stories behind the scenes. He'd buy a new thing. Wow, that's great. Yeah, it cost me $1,100. It cost me $1,300. It was a $5,000 thing I got for only $2,500. Exactly the same item. You could not get the same story from the person. So, the pieces started falling into place. And I realized one of my comedy instructors was a sociopath. Like, Doug, no wonder your comedy is like it is. No wonder nobody's asking you to come and do shows. Except for the dog lovers. They're the ones.
Well,
Okay.
what I remember from our very first night of our comedy classes, Doug, is all the comics came up at the same time, just coincidentally, and everybody was introducing each other. And Doug was like, "Hi, I'm Doug, Max. Hi, I'm so-and-so." I went up to the sociopath. I said, "Hi, I'm Sade Veteranois." And he's like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" For like 20 minutes, he thought that my name was Sade Veteranois. I told him this like years later. He says, "You're an asshole."
Not only did he say you're an asshole, he said, Tom, you're an asshole. You should build a set around your being an asshole. And I actually convinced you to do that. And I actually went to a set where Tom, instead of saying, oh, that's just stupid, or, that's just stupid, he began with, I'm an asshole. And he peppered his entire set with reminding people that he's an asshole. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
it didn't work. It turns out I'm a whole ass. Who knew?
and I think I know I told you not to do that. I told you not to say it's stupid. People are laughing, and then you tell them it's stupid. So now you're telling them that they're stupid for having laughed at your stupid joke.
Yeah, now that's my trademark. They look forward to that.
Yeah.
Nothing will ever beat Tom and Jerry, Tom and Jelly. I'm sorry.
It's racial, by the way, and
So what?
It's so funny to remember that. I love Bobby Gaines for one reason and one reason only. Besides, he's a really nice guy. But his joke, I don't know if you've heard it, about his wife having slave apnea. She wakes up in the middle of the night going, yeah, and it just hit me at the right time. And once somebody makes you laugh, they say you like fall in love with people that make you laugh.
Well, they also say that people don't remember what comics say; they remember how they make them feel.
Exactly, that's so
right?
True. Yep. Except the 15 comics that stole my Mawa Wawa line.
Well, hey, listen, it's, what do they say? Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. You can't worry about it,
No, I know.
You say great minds think alike, and Mawa Wawa is something that any comic walking into a Wawa at Mawa would think,
I know, it's obvious.
The thing is, I think at the end of the day, you always have to remember as a comedian why you started doing this. And you did it because you enjoy it. It makes you happy. And the fact that you can make other people happy sometimes doing something that makes you happy.
Yep.
And you worry about what else is doing.
Oh, stop. Okay. Enough. You don't think I've heard that before? Okay.
I feel like Doug is going to land a Boeing 747 anytime.
I hope not.
This headset. Oi, it's time to put the gear down, right?
Do you know?
It looks like he's landing a Boeing from 1974.
And don't call me Shirley.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna inflate the autopilot. I'll leave. I know when I'm not working. God,
Like I would like to know, why does Doug have all this professional looking equipment? It looks like he's in a studio, the mic, and then Tom looks like he's in the back seat of a Buick being abducted.
I'm a moron. And the guy said, Doug, we can't hear you that well. Spend this $1,000 on a mic and a headphone, And then I do it, and then people say, Doug, you sound staticky. So I get rid of it, or they can't hear me. The best show we ever had was where I would talk, but the sound didn't come through. Am I right, Tom?
Oh, that's usually the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Tom's in someone's 6-year-old daughter's bedroom, and you're in 1970 in an airplane hangar, and I feel like I don't even have a microphone. What do you talk? What's picking up your voice, Tom? Oh, it's your laptop?
A laptop, yeah.
Oh, all right. All right.
Which is odd because I don't even have a lap.
Right. You probably have more of a lap than most people, Tom, right?
That's why I'm Santa Claus.
That's good. That's good.
Have you ever been Santa Claus, Tom?
Not officially, at parties and stuff.
Hey,
Not
little
officially.
kid, come and sit on my lap. Are you?
He just showed up at random parties with a Santa Claus outfit on. It wasn't what is that, a Manhattan, Doug? What are you drinking? What is he drinking? Oh, that's an old fashioned.
An old fashioned, yeah.
Look, you can guess. It's a bourbon and 7.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay. Well, it's pretty. I was pretty close.
I wanted to ask you, when you were roasting Gene, what was the drink? You had a tray made up for you.
Water and ice.
What is it?
It was water and ice, but it was supposed to be absolute.
Absolute.
Okay.
I was wondering what his drink was.
Yeah.
That was a fun night, by the way.
In fact, at the Absolute Distillery, which is somewhere, I guess, where is that, in Germany or Europe, France? I don't know where it is, but there's 2 sections to that brewery. It's the Absolute Brewery and then the Gene Nagel Brewery. They have a whole second distillery, I should say.
My lineage goes back to Austria, and
Yours?
yeah,
No, because Gene's is also.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, we might have
Gene's
been.
lineage it goes back to Austria and Bottle King. I'm also half Austrian, tell you the truth, Doug. So maybe we're distantly related. Who knows?
What's the other half?
English.
All right.
And Tom, you say you're 100% olive oil, are you?
Yes. Absolutely.
I feel like there's some seasoned breadcrumbs in there somewhere.
I never did that ancestry thing, but as far as I know, everybody's been Italian.
So, Doug, if a comic came up to you and you liked him or her, and they said, "What's the most important piece of advice you could give me in comedy?"
Have fun.
Good advice. Tom, same question. You got a sandwich for me?
My question is, you gonna eat that?
I always tell comics after giving them advice, I'll say, honestly, my favorite advice is don't take advice from comics.
Well, I mean, you have to get to know people and realize what their motivations may or may not be, as you well know more than anyone.
Right. Right.
I think over time you learn if someone really is in your corner or if they're, somehow looking to use you or keep you down. And, I think competent comics.
That part I missed, Doug, but I know when people are in my corner.
Yeah, I mean,
somebody comes up to you after a show and says, "Hey, you could say this or you could say this," even though I never will use any of that. I know they're thinking of me, and I appreciate that.
I mean, honestly, the best constructive criticism I've ever received, I think, has been more from audience members, to be honest with you. And I think that if you listen to, I was told years ago to stick around after shows and to listen to what audience members have to tell you, because they have no, there's no motive for them to lie to you,
Yeah,
and,
right.
some of it's bullshit. I mean, sometimes they'll tell you, crappy jokes that they saw on the internet and they think you should tell them. But on occasion, people will say things to you, and I don't even think they realize how impactful they are. And also a voice from outside the comedy world. They can see the forest for the trees. So sometimes that's good advice. The other thing I would always say to comics too is that if you get to a point, look, initially you have to enjoy yourself, you have to have fun. You can't have it in your head, oh, I want to make money, oh, I want to work as a professional. You really just have to do it no different than an artist would paint for the enjoyment of it initially. And if something comes of it, it comes of it. But if you do get to the point where you have opportunities and you've got something that people think is marketable, and you can work, the other thing I tell guys all the time is treat it like a business, treat it like a job. Don't show up late, don't be drunk, don't be talking shit about, excuse my language, about other your motivation when you're there should be for you to polish yourself, for you to get better, and also to support the other comics, because it's about energy. If your energy is bad, if your energy is negative, if your energy is about keeping other people down and talking bad things because you feel that's your competition and it's going to further your career, that's going to come out as a performer on stage, and your likability factor is going to go. People see right through that stuff. I'm always supportive of other comics. Somebody said to me years ago, there's plenty of in this world for good comics, so you don't have to try to keep knock other people down, so, but treat it like a profession. Get up and if you're hired, do your work beforehand, know where you're going, be there early, be respectful, be polite, be nice to the wait staff and the bartenders, be kind to the other comedians. If someone tells you to do 10 minutes, do 10 minutes, do 9 minutes 57 seconds. Be professional. I think that's something years later, after I began working as a comedian and working in clubs and working for pro bookers, one of the things I used to hear time and time again that they really appreciated about me more than anything, more than me being able to make people laugh, was that I was reliable, and that when I was there, I was positive. I got along with the other staff. I got along with the comedians. And again, they could rely on me. If they told me content, like you said to me, content today, if someone says to you, you can't say F, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that, take them seriously, because ultimately, once you leave with your $200, $400, whatever it is, they're going to have to feel the wrath of whoever hired them, and more than likely you won't work for them again. So think long term and think as a professional.
Right.
You reminded me, actually, Doug, of the first time I ever met you in telling that story. And I've got to tell it.
The hot tub.
Not the hot tub, not that one.
Second time we met.
So I had been doing open mics at Scotty's for almost a year and a half. Every third Thursday I did a show. Jason Pollock was running the room. Jason was very kind to me. And, the first times I'd have 10, 12 people coming. I'd always have 5 or 6. One night I go there, I only had 2 people. And Doug was the guest runner of the room. You were running the room that night.
Okay.
Doug, you only have 2 guests. I shouldn't put you on at all, but I'll give you 2 minutes. So I got up and I said hello, and I was done. And when I finished, you said, Doug, come with me. And there was an urgency in your voice. And you brought me in the back room and you said, I told you you could have 2 minutes. And you looked at your watch and you said, you did 2 minutes and 17 seconds. I forget, it might have been 23. But
that's being in me. Yeah.
You know something? And I've told that story, and people that know you laugh, because they know, and I saw it later. You and I share an OCD-ness.
Yes.
That may vary at different strengths, but I've got it pretty bad myself. So, but
I'm perfectly centered on my screen. Go ahead.
That one little thing was, I made a commitment. I said I signed up. I was supposed to bring so many. I didn't. Jason was a wimp. I love him, but you were the first one that drew a line, and it made me realize, there's a business, and you gotta do stuff. And in all honesty, I probably had not worked as hard as I could to get more than 2 people out that night. But I'd also been doing it for like a year and a half. You wouldn't have known that, and it wouldn't have. It may or may not have mattered. But anyway, that was it. I recognized you can have OCD and be a comedian.
It can be beneficial at times.
Sorry?
It can be beneficial at times.
It's a blessing and a curse, as you said before. And
But you want to know something? I really, part of it is a little OCD, but part of it is I've always felt the responsibility, when you're in the business a little longer and you have, to impart certain stuff onto other comics. And I always felt that was a learning opportunity, teaching opportunity for me, because I just know, being in the industry, that it's stuff like that can get you. There's, you know what? There's so many funny, talented comedians out there. Sometimes what separates one from the pack are those little things,
Yeah,
you
the one
know.
that's on
And that,
time, takes a shower.
yeah, no, really, absolutely. I mean, that's sometimes, it's that, think about it. I mean, when you have a guy at the Tom, what do you call when they do the running and whatnot for the pre-draft in the NFL, the pre-draft, when they run and the combines.
Okay. I don't know football. I know meatball.
Okay. Well, when the undrafted college players go through these combines, where these coaches look at their running ability, jumping ability, as one hundredth of a second could be the difference between you getting drafted over the guy next to you. So sometimes, when think of the difference between a guy who plays AAA and a guy who plays AA baseball. Sometimes it's so small, the difference. But you know what? Though I love to say the devil's in the details. The devil's in the details. And people that are in the business, that are running shows or working at pro clubs or booking stuff or producing stuff, they appreciate that stuff more than anything. Guys who are professional and do what they're supposed to be doing. It's believe me, it's noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's frustrating working with people that aren't professional.
Yeah.
You plan things for a show that begins at 8 and it starts at 8:45, and you take it in stride. But if you say something, do it. But
Right.
in so many areas of our life, it seems like those simple things have sort of fallen by the wayside. I don't want to blame it on I don't want to blame it on anybody, but a lot of things seem to be falling by the wayside that used to be accepted as common courtesy or common professionalism, and you don't see it. The other thing I was going to say about the comics you were talking about that are always on about other comics and insulting, and like they're really good at roast battles because their life is insulting other people. I think they kind of run in packs, and they'll do shows together. So relative to one another, they can have their own kind of stacking, even though they're, I won't say not funny, but I've seen comics whose act seems to be irritating the audience and then being belligerent.
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the audience paid to be there, and they paid to be entertained, and they're the reason you're there and the reason you're being paid. And I would say everybody bought a ticket. So, nobody likes to go into the audience as much as I do. And it's something that I love to do. I've always done. It's always been one of my strengths as a comedian. But I never forget that everybody sitting in the audience paid for a show, and they're equally as entitled to have fun as everybody else. So, but yeah, sometimes comics make the mistake, especially early on, taking an adversarial relationship with the audience. And, you can't forget they're your friend, or they better be your friend anyway.
They need to be.
They wanted to come out and laugh, and you're telling them it looks like they're wearing a picnic, a tablecloth as a dress,
Well, it's fine. I mean, you can tell them that their dress looks like a picnic table as long as you've established a rapport with them. And
Right.
it's like bust Tom or bust you. You guys not, the three of us know each other for years, so we have an established rapport. Now, sometimes a rapport can take 10 years to establish. Sometimes you can establish a rapport in 30 seconds. But you have to make sure that you're walking a fine line as a comedian, and you got to make sure that you have established that rapport and mutual respect with an audience before you do that. Some people just get on stage, they get frustrated because they're not getting the response they want, so they get aggressive. And it's basically what they're doing is they're just pissed off, and they're just going after the audience because they want to get that frustration out.
Yeah, that always boggled my mind. These comics that would just go after an audience member or several audience members because they're flopping.
Right. Well, I mean, again, it's got to be funny, and you can say anything as long as everybody is amused by it, but you have to be careful. And that's why in the beginning stages, when I talk to very young comics, very new comics, I should say, because none of the three of us were young comics, right? But any, newer comics, be safe. Don't go anywhere controversial. Stay on the safe side. Stay away from that stuff until you get experience, until you get your sea legs, and you're able to walk that fine line. And plus, the more relaxed you are on stage, the more clearly you're going to think on your feet. You're not going to just say something out of anger, frustration. You things can go south very quickly.
Doug, I think you have kids, don't you?
I'm sorry?
You have kids, don't you?
I have a daughter. Yeah, she's
Well,
20.
I've got 2 boys. Anyway, you reminded me of that age, if you remember, back when they're around, whenever they're beginning to walk, and they're like, I can walk, and then guaranteed within a few weeks they get so cocky they bang into a wall or trip or they fall or whatever, and they learn. Yeah. And you see comics do that, and I remember doing that too. I remember my 4th show ever was Gotham. Andy Engels talked me into bringing 15 people, and
right.
Only 12 could come. But I was ready. I was God and Jesus and bestiality. I had it all. I mean, when I tell you I was prepared, I wasn't at all.
Is that the show you blew the light?
I blew the light. They turned off the microphone. The MC stood to the side, and then the guy came on the entire showroom at Gotham and said, Doug, your time is up. I finished up my minute or 2, and I eventually got off. But all I did was premises. All I said was I had this funny joke about this and this and this, and it wasn't really jokes. But a lot of my material got stolen. So, and I saw it take another form very soon thereafter. So I was pissed, but I was also somewhat complimented. Now I'd be entirely pissed, but they were premises, and what are you going to do? You can't copyright a premise per se.
Yeah, I mean, I remember probably the first 3 or 4 shows, quote unquote, that I ever did. I got laughs. People laughed. It was nothing crazy, but they laughed, and I felt like it went well. And I remember a very experienced seasoned comedian walking up to me and saying to me, "So how's it going? How are your shows going?" And I said, "Oh, great. Every time I've gotten up, I've gotten laughs, and I think I've done well." And Doug, the first step is admitting you have a problem, by the way. And I'm sure the pilot who's approaching the runway now is appreciating that. He's got a backup, Tom. Or is that a bourbon chaser? I don't even know what that is.
That was a cranberry peach.
Okay. Anyway, but I remember him saying to me, "Oh boy, that's unfortunate." And I said, "It's unfortunate that the first 4 times I've been on stage, I've gotten laughs." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because the first time you crash and burn, it's gonna hurt all the more, And and it's true. So I drove out to PA and I did a guest spot for somebody, and it went horribly, and the guy running the show was just miserable. The closest thing to Satan, I think, that ever booked stand up. And he ripped me a new hole, and not Tom's hole, but just a new hole. And I drove back. It was like the longest drive of my life, in a snowstorm. I think I got paid with a Diet Coke, and I was just miserable. And I said to myself, my God, why would I even be subjecting myself to this stuff? It was very depressing. And I think, that's the turning point in the beginning where a lot of people fall to the wayside. But something just said to me, you know what? I'm going to stick with this. I enjoyed it the first 3 or 4 times. All right, I crashed and burned. And that's all part of the learning process. All of us do. We all suck. There's all times we suck, There's always going to be times you say things and they just fall flat. And but it's that stick-to-itiveness. You keep going. We're all warriors, man. Somebody said to me recently, "Which comics do you respect the most?" And I said, "Listen, I've been doing this long enough. I respect everybody who does this. I don't care who you are. You could be Jerry Seinfeld, you could be, it doesn't matter who you are, or you could be a guy doing a coffee shop in Lyndhurst. I respect everyone who does this because it's incredibly difficult. And you really have to have balls to do it, and it says a lot about a person. And let's face it, most people who try this, they drop out very quickly after the first few shots because it's not what people think it is.
Right.
So I respect everybody. It's a tough game.
And I think a lot of neophytes and wannabes don't realize really what it takes to succeed in it. They think it's easy.
There's
The one key that has sustained me more than anything these 9 years
meds.
is being delusional.
Yeah.
That helps. That helps.
But I mean, it's delusional, or it's look, we're at the end of the day, it's an art. It's an art form. You can't forget about that. And artists are artists.
I have a conversation with my girlfriend recently.
You have a girlfriend? Fantastic. Go ahead.
Anything's possible.
All right.
And the conversation was, when we're having a serious conversation, it's not the time to like crack a joke. I'm like, honey, you just told me to put the plates in the dishwasher with the rose facing in the upper right-hand corner. So when it goes into the closet, it's facing the right way. And then when it goes on the plate, I said, how can I not? She's like, everything doesn't have to be comedy. Anyway, after 5 years, I finally had the conversation. I said, honey, whether I say it out loud or not, I'm thinking it in my head. And comedy is an art. You wouldn't tell Rembrandt, to, finish your breakfast. You don't need to go out and get better light. Whatever. Not that I'm Rembrandt. We know I'm not Rembrandt. Who's a really bad artist, Tom?
Me.
Okay. Anyway. I said, honey, I need to exercise. I need to practice. And where do I get comedy from?
You also you tell her next time, you say, look, comedians see the world through a kaleidoscope. That's what we are, and if you are truly a comedian at heart, if it's really part of who you are, it's hard. It's you don't turn it on and off. You just naturally, you don't have to always say it. And that's, your girlfriend is correct.
Work on that part.
Like, I know our friend Pat Lamb went to he spoke at a Jewish wedding, an Orthodox Jewish wedding many years ago, of another comedian. I don't know if I'm not going to mention names, but he got up at the podium, to say a few words along with some of the other comedian friends of this guy. And in front of a room of 300 Orthodox Jews, he said that the catering facility looked like an Indian whorehouse, and I think, sometimes you have to have a filter. But there's no doubt that you're gonna think it, because you're a comedian. You walk in a room, and like the three of us watch the news, and we see maybe some more of the irony maybe than other people see. Right. That's because that's who we naturally. I think really good comedians are comedians. You're a comedian. I mean, it's just who you are. Whether it was a tragic childhood or, whatever the reason is, we became this person. And the reason we get a little success is that we learn to relax on stage, where we can just let it come out naturally.
You reminded me, when I was younger, growing up, I might have been like 8 or 9 years old. I was like always like joking around and playing pranks on everybody. And my father, who was very straight-laced, the business-like, he always used to say to me, "Don't be a clown. Don't be a clown." Well, today I'm a clown.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen. I mean, what's wrong with it? Again, it's like, look, we love doing what we're doing, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It's not like we're just, acting like fools. You're that. I forget who it was. An old time pro told me years ago. He said, the work that we do is primarily off stage. Whether it be dealing with the business end of things, or whether it be
Writing.
or writing. Some of us do more.
Writing. Yeah. Think of it. How many hours do you have to write to get a minute?
I mean, yeah, and everyone creates in different ways, but the reality is, once you're up there for the most part. Most of us are enjoying ourselves, but the offstage stuff is tough, and dealing with the venues and the bookers and that end of it, the travel, the driving. I mean, back in the day, remember before we had GPS? I mean, we were all, copying MapQuest, and before that, we were writing directions down and all that.
Extras.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Putting a map on the hood of your car. I mean, that's to me the weather, being tired, performing when it's like Andrew Dice Clay said, what people don't realize is that not everyone is always in the mood to perform.
Right.
Sometimes I remember I performed 45 minutes after I had got a phone call that my mom had passed from cancer, and I went up on stage and performed 45.
Wow.
Yeah, and someone said to me, "Well, how could you have done that?" And I said, we as comedians, we learn to compartmentalize if you're good, and also I knew that my mother would have wanted me to,
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the tough thing. Not everyone's always in a jovial mood. We're pros. We do it. It's a job. When we love most of the time, but we have some tough nights too, right? It can be brutal sometimes.
Absolutely.
Like a wimp.
Absolutely.
My first night being an MC at the Comedy Cove, my mother had a stroke in the middle of the night. I got a call first thing in the morning of the Friday night show that she was on a respirator and they needed to take her off.
Wow.
I called up Gene and I bailed on the show.
That's understandable.
It is either way. I heard Buddy Hackett performed. I think it was Buddy Hackett after his son died.
Well, Lou Costello had to perform when he found out that his 2-year-old son drowned and died.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tom, you to know if I die, I want you to go on.
I think that's a given. I don't think Tom would even miss breakfast.
We're missing something tonight. Hey, welcome to Funny Talk with Margelli. I feel like we're missing something tonight, but I don't know quite what it is. Anyway, let's forge ahead.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
See, Doug, if you change your name to Peanut Butter, we could be Funny Talk with Peanut Butter and Mangelli.
I would change my name to Peanut Butter.
Doug, you wanna be his co-host?
I don't know if I could stand that wood paneling, Doug. I'd have to maybe.
You're his co-host. You don't have to have my wood paneling. You can go from the sofa.
I don't want you to die, Doug. I really don't, because I don't know where our certain friend is going to find a ride if he needs it. I don't want to. I don't want you to die.
Oh man.
Do I have
For money for liposuction.
Listen, I've got stories about our friend that I don't think you've heard, but remind me sometime when you want to hear a story that's like, sounds like him. Too many of them.
So Doug, where do you see, with this whole this quarantine business and COVID and pandemic, where do you see comedy after the dust settles?
Well, I mean, I think it'll recover. I think you can't mimic with any form of technology the experience of live stand-up. No different than Broadway. You could watch Les Mis on Netflix or on television or on a computer. I think the experience of seeing something in person is never going to be able to be replicated. And I think that's one of the advantages that we have. If nothing else, just the interaction that you have with a comedian, especially the smaller, more intimate situations. Maybe if you're seeing a guy in Madison Square Garden, it wouldn't make a difference if you're seeing him on a computer screen or on your flat screen at home. But I think particularly the smaller venues, the ones that are, a couple hundred people or less, I think you'll never be able to replicate that. And I think people are going to be craving it. I just think it's going to take time. People need to feel safe. They need to feel confident. But once it starts again, I think it'll be strong, and maybe stronger than ever. Who knows? Also, as you guys know, a lot of our business is not comedy clubs, bars, and restaurants. A lot of it is fundraisers and corporate things and churches and synagogues. And it's a great fundraising, a way for these places to fundraise and make money. And again, they're going to need to continue to do that. I think people are going to be craving getting out there, but I think a lot of people are still apprehensive. But look, to me, seeing a band live and seeing a band not live, it's a completely different experience.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've seen bands, groups in concert that I wasn't even a big fan of. but in person, I enjoyed the crap out of it because I just thought it was an amazing experience. So, I think it's hard. It's hard for comics right now, especially newer comics without a lot of stage time because, you're just learning and getting used to doing it, and you're just developing your act. For those of us who've been doing it a long time, I've done a few shows in the last year. Very minimal, much far fewer than I would ever have done in a normal year. But
Yeah, right.
for me, I mean, once I was up there after a few minutes, it was like riding a bike. But
Go
again, for
nuts.
people that were only doing it for a couple of years, it's going to be tough. It'll be almost like starting over again. But if you want it bad enough, you're going to do it. That's the bottom line. You're going to put the work in, and hopefully, I can't wait. I'm excited. You're excited. We're all excited to do it. It's something we love. It's not like losing a job at Chick-fil-A, right? It's like losing, and unlike an art form like painting, we can't do it without an audience. We need an audience. And that makes it very difficult. It makes it hard for all of us.
Right. Yeah, I'm hopeful, but I know it's going to take time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's easier for me though. Audience, no audience, the reaction I get is typically about the same. So they stay in the military, train like you fight, and fight like you train.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but we'll all be back together soon, sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Yeah.
We got to get Tom out of that box, whatever he's in, Doug. We got to get him some fresh air, for God's, him and the Kool-Aid Man.
He doesn't have any room in his car. He's got a refrigerator and a microwave in the back seat in case he gets hungry.
Yeah,
I practice my mime act over here.
What are those photos on the wall behind you there, Doug? What are we looking at?
So a couple of them are things that my mother had picked up. Then I've got a cell from Disney.
You're not one of those guys who puts his own headshot on the wall, are you?
No, I do not have my own. Listen, I think Tom and I both share the desire to be world renowned and obscure at the same time. I want to be able to go out to Dunkin' Donuts without getting bothered by people. It's like annoying. I can't go anywhere in New Jersey without. Are you Doug Max from Funny Talk with Mangelli and Max? You know what it's like, Doug.
Oh yeah, it's horrible. I always tell people I just want to live like a normal person, please.
So why start now?
I want to ask you a very personal question, and you don't have to answer it, but I'll proceed it by the day I got my divorce papers in the mail. I called the Comedy Cove and booked myself in the comedy club for the new talent night.
Okay.
I'd been waiting because one of the things there was one thing that my ex hated me having, and that was fun. So
yeah, ditto.
Anyway, that was the, I don't know, traumatic event that I was like escaping to get into that. I once went diving for a week. A cop was my buddy. A cop from Bayonne, tough city. And we became buddies. We were diving buddies, and we talked and drank, and he told me stories. And I know being a cop anywhere you're going to run into trauma no matter what you do. Do you think any of your comedy was to get away from, the intensity of what it can be to be a cop?
The short answer is no. I started using humor as an escape. More so, I had a pretty traumatic childhood. I think if you ask most comics, not very few of us come from a Disney-esque background, but I had a very rough upbringing, very rough stuff I went through as a kid, product of a really pretty brutal divorce. And my sisters and I went through a lot. And I think that's what kind of changed me and made me go in that direction and started using humor as more or less of an escape or a way to connect with people when I felt very insecure about my situation in life and where I was as a kid. That's kind of where I went in that direction. However, comedy definitely for me is an escape, whether it be from the stresses of my job, my career of choice, or just any other types of stresses that we have in life, whether it be bills, being a parent, trying to raise kids, trying to deal with the broken windshield that you got on your car driving down the highway. I mean, there's it's definitely an escape, and it's a healthy thing, and it's a wonderful thing. And frankly, I tell you, in a lot of ways, I always tell people, other than being a dad, it saved me in a lot of ways. It saved me as a person because, whereas a lot of people may have gone to drugs or alcohol or gambling or a million other vices, for me, my drug was stand up. That was my drug. And it definitely made me a happier person, a better person. And, it's a healthy escape, so yeah, I mean, again, short answer, not specifically because of my career, but yeah, it's a stressful career. I mean, and but any stresses I've had, this has been, and that's one of the bad things and hard things this last year, is that you lose that, you lose that that escape, and even just the camaraderie, going to these shows and seeing, these other comics that you've come up with and made friends with. Talking about McClin's, I met so many comics through the years there. That room ran for 13 and a half years.
Oh, wow.
Very
Yeah.
near the end. And
13
many of the people
years.
that
So you can imagine, over the years, there were so many comedians that I never would have met, because when I shows, typically I'm working, headliner, middle, opener, and I'm not working with any, beginning comics at all. So for me to meet some of these and I started doing things like on the side, I started teaching. That was one of the things I another love I found was doing tutoring and coaching, and I still do it now. I love it. And other than stand up itself, the next best thing I always love is working with other comedians. Whether it be on their material, their stage, the time, and the technical aspects of it, and trying to be honest with comedians through that. I mean, that was something I never would have done because I wasn't going to offer those services to other pros that were peers of mine. I mean, it's been hard this last year on all of us for that reason. I think for most of us, it's a healthy escape, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, mine is probably an unhealthy escape, but it's an escape. It counts.
I tell you, during the lockdown, I ended up after having lost some weight prior, I ended up gaining all the weight back again. And I think part of it was that, they took my defense mechanism away, being funny. That was always my way to deal with things.
Yeah, it was your comfort food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I guess, on the other hand, if you want to look at it from a positive aspect, the farmers have benefited from this. Your stresses of, who knows, there's probably a farmer out there with a brand new pickup or something that's happened. You're not able to perform at this time, right?
How many farmers are harvesting Twinkies? That's what I want to know.
I don't know if Twinkies have to come from something natural, right?
At some point.
When's
Yeah.
the last time you had a Twinkie, Tom? I bet you have
Oh,
had it in 10
It's
years.
been a long time. But when they first came out in the 60s, the cream was banana flavored. I don't know if you remember that.
Really?
Yeah, that's where I got my love for Twinkies.
I love banana cream pie.
Yeah.
What are you telling us, Doug, is that had they not been banana flavored, Tom would not love Twinkies, which I don't know how believable that is.
It's just like shit.
I tried.
Yeah, but it's in a sponge cake. Cake is pretty good.
Right. Cake may be healthy for Tom.
So Tom,
I hate to say this, but we're pretty much out of time, aren't we?
you know what we forgot to do?
We forgot to mention our sponsor.
Yeah. How could you
Well,
forget that?
I don't know. We really need to do that.
I'm going to tell Jack of J. Irwin Productions that you forgot to do the sponsorship bit and tell people that if they want a comedy show anywhere in the New York, New Jersey area, all they need to do is write to Jack at jirwinproductions.com. They'll hook you up for a fundraiser. You could get brilliant comedians like Tom or me, or really brilliant comedians like Doug here.
Good save.
Got to always be thinking of an escape.
He's not as dumb as I look.
And for those of you who have been following the show, you know that Jack also can hook you up with comedians who will come and clean your kitchen. They'll clean it in 5 minutes. They'll drive up to 3 hours to get to you for only $5. It's a good buy. Jack at jirwinproductions.com.
You'd make a wonderful manager, Doug, I'll tell you.
Let me tell you, he's killed. He's okay. The EMS was late, but he killed.
Well, Doug Karpf, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
It was more than a pleasure. I had a good time.
Same.
It's been too long. We need to get out there and start working again, and hopefully
do.
together.
Agreed.
And, do you have anything to plug at this point with anything going on?
Well, you know what? I would say to everybody, friend me on Facebook, Doug Karpf, DOUGKAR, like Robert, P like Peter, F like Frank, Facebook comedy, friend me on Facebook. I usually use that as my form of, social media for posting any shows I'm doing. Any comics out there that are looking for some coaching or private tutoring or whatever, reach out to me. You can reach out to me, Facebook Messenger, or, my number I can give you once you reach out to me. And other than that, like I said, we don't have a lot going on right now, but hopefully soon we'll all be back at it again. I look forward to seeing all you guys and all the audience out there. I don't know how many listeners you guys have, but
they're both listening tonight.
They're both listening.
I knew Kathy is listening.
Always a pleasure talking to both of you guys. You're both very funny guys, and I consider you both friends.
Oh, likewise. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really
all right.
I just want to finish on this. Yeah. I've been doing one of the nice things about getting older in comedy is more and more shows that I'm doing. Every comic I know and I like, and it's really nice. And there, there's some venues where it's a little more camaraderie. There's more camaraderie going on. More local going. You've done Tierney's, haven't you, with Pat Grion?
Yes.
Yeah. So like that club. But I miss all my comedy friends, and I'm so grateful for them. Many of them I remember meeting at McGlynn's way back. They're all still doing it. Some of them maybe shouldn't be, but
Hey, I'm standing right here, Doug.
I love your comedy, Tom. You also know I don't know why, but I love it anyway.
That's just stupid. Anyway, on that note, I want to say thanks for tuning in. Doug, thanks for being on the show. And
thanks, guys.
We talk with Mangelli and Max and Doug Karpf, Karpf. Find him on Facebook. Find him around. And if you have a comedy show, seriously think about booking him after you not so seriously think about booking me. That's been it.
Good night, guys.
Thanks again. Take care.
Good night.
Night.